The whole street trembled the moment HOA President Linda gave the order for the Bulldozers to tear through my 150-year-old heritage wall. She stood there believing she had finally won, never realizing she had just signed her own destruction warrant. As the final brick crumbled into dust, I stepped forward holding the single document that transformed her confident smirk into raw fear. That structure wasn't merely a wall. It was a carefully preserved legal trap, one that was about to cost her everything. Today, I'm revealing how I landlocked a $10 million mansion and marched the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA straight into court. And trust me, you won't see the ending coming. Linda didn't just want a piece of my land. She wanted to erase my family's legacy. As HOA president, she behaved like a neighborhood tyrant. That wall is an eyesore, Alex. It doesn't match the modern aesthetic of this community, she shouted, jabbing her finger toward my century-old stone boundary. I reminded her that the wall had been standing long before her $10 million mansion was even a drawing on an architect's desk. But heritage meant nothing to Linda. All she cared about was expanding her private driveway. She handed me an ultimatum: 24 hours to tear it down myself, or she would demolish it and send me the bill for every single cent. That was the moment I realized the HOA queen had officially declared war. That night, I went down into the basement of my family home. My grandfather always said the house held secret protected by more than just bricks and mortar. Buried beneath dusty coal sacks, I uncovered a rusted iron chest. My hands trembled as I forced it open. Inside, wrapped carefully in oilskin, was an original 1870 allodial title, along with a hand-drawn county map. As I traced the faded ink lines, my pulse thundered in my ears. The map didn't just outline my property. It revealed that the historical preservation boundary ran directly through the center of Linda's living room. She wasn't merely attempting to take my yard. She had unknowingly built 40% of her dream mansion on land that legally belonged to the state, and partially to my estate. The next morning, the roar of heavy machinery jolted me awake. I rushed outside to find a massive excavator parked in front of my wall. Linda stood nearby wearing a hard hat and a smug grin that screamed victory. "Time's up, Alex. If you won't modernize, I will," she yelled over the rumbling engine. I didn't shout back. I didn't stand in front of the machine. Instead, I pulled out my phone and began recording. "Linda, if you touch one stone, you're not just tearing down a wall. You're breaking the law. I warned." She laughed, waved to the operator, and the excavator's bucket swung down. The first strike sent 150-year-old granite exploding into fragments across the dirt. She believed she was demolishing my property. In reality, she was demolishing her own future. The grinding sound of steel teeth against ancient stone felt like a blade slicing through my chest. Linda practically danced as clouds of dust rose into the air. "See, Alex? Power belongs to whoever has the biggest machine," she taunted, venom dripping from every word. But I wasn't watching her. I was watching my watch. 10 minutes earlier, I had called the county sheriff and the state historical commission. Suddenly, the distant wail of sirens pierced through the mechanical roar. Linda's smile flickered, just for a second, but she didn't signal the operator to stop. "Go ahead, call the cops. I'm the HOA president. I've got permits for everything," she shouted over the approaching sirens. She genuinely believed her title made her untouchable. 2 patrol cars and a black SUV screeched into my driveway. Out stepped Sheriff Miller and a sharply dressed woman representing the Historical Society. "Shut that machine down now," the sheriff commanded. Linda stormed toward them, feigning outrage. "Sheriff, thank goodness you're here. This man is interfering with a lawful HOA improvement project." She lied effortlessly. I stepped forward holding the 1870 allodial title and the county map retrieved from the cellar. "Actually, Sheriff," I said calmly, "she's not improving anything. She's destroying protected landmark on land she doesn't even own." Linda burst into hysterical laughter. "That's fake. I have the modern survey," she snapped. The woman from the Historical Society carefully accepted my document, handling it with gloved hands. As she compared the faded map to the GPS data on her tablet, her expression shifted dramatically. A heavy silence settled over the scene. "Sheriff," she said quietly, "this is an original state-granted title. According to this record, the boundary isn't limited to this wall. It extends 50 feet beyond what modern surveys show." The color drained from Linda's face. "What does that mean?" she whispered, her confidence evaporating. I looked directly into her eyes and allowed myself a slow smile. "It means, Linda, that your entire west wing, your luxury kitchen, and your master suite are sitting on my property. And now that you've demolished the landmark that marked that boundary, the state has officially declared your entire mansion an illegal encroachment." Linda turned slowly toward her $10 million home, as if she were seeing it for the first time. The reality hit her all at once. By tearing down my wall, she hadn't expanded her driveway. She had landlocked herself. Worse, she had just provided proof that she was occupying land she didn't legally own. "You can't do this. I'll sue you into the ground," she shrieked, her voice cracking. But the sheriff was already stepping forward, handcuffs in hand. "Linda, you're under arrest for destruction of a historical landmark and felony trespassing. We'll let the judge decide who's suing who." As they escorted her away, I glanced down at the shattered stones of my wall. I knew something she didn't. This was only the beginning of her nightmare. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Linda in a high-stakes courtroom. The confident woman who once strutted around in her designer HOA blazer was gone. In her place sat someone smaller, shaken, desperate. Her attorneys argued that the 1870 deed was outdated, claiming that modern HOA bylaws and recent surveys should override it. But the judge wasn't interested in creative interpretations of property law. He slammed his gavel down so hard the courtroom fell completely silent. "Madam," he said sternly, "an allodial title is the highest form of property ownership recognized in this state. By destroying that wall, you didn't merely violate an HOA guideline. You attempted to seize land that has been protected for over a century." Linda began to sob softly, but the judge wasn't finished. The ruling was devastating. First, he ordered Linda to fund the complete restoration of my stone wall using original 19th century masonry techniques. The labor alone exceeded $80,000. But that was just the beginning. Because her mansion's west wing sat squarely on my family's protected historical land, the judge presented her with 2 options: pay me a $15,000 monthly land lease indefinitely, or demolish 40% of her house to restore my property line. Linda looked like she might collapse. She had poured her life savings into that mansion. Now it stood as a ticking legal time bomb. She couldn't afford the lease, and her bank refused to refinance a property that was legally encroaching on protected land. Within 30 days, the queen of the HOA was evicted. I stood on my porch as a specialized demolition crew arrived. Not to destroy my wall this time, but to surgically remove her luxury kitchen and master suite from my land. Every brick lifted off my property felt like justice being restored. The HOA board, terrified they might be next, stripped Linda of her presidency immediately. They issued me a formal written apology and, in a twist of irony, appointed me head of the new Historical Oversight Committee. Today, my 150-year-old wall stands stronger and taller than ever. Linda, meanwhile, is living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, still burdened by legal fees and the cost of rebuilding the very wall she tried to erase. She believed she could wield power to steal my heritage. Instead, she lost her palace and her pride. Turns out the old saying holds true. If you try to take someone else's land, you may end up losing your own home. Justice wasn't just served. It was rebuilt, stone by stone. But the story didn't end when the demolition crew left. When the neighborhood watched Linda's $10 million mansion being sliced in half, shockwaves rippled through the entire community. For years, she'd find families over curtain colors and grass height. Now her own home looked like a construction disaster zone. The remaining HOA board members realized they were standing on sinking ground. They tried to distance themselves from her decisions, but I wasn't finished. I filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of every neighbor she had bullied over the past 5 years. Using that same 1870 deed, I demonstrated how several of her renovation projects had violated environmental protection codes. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I saw Linda standing on what remained of her driveway. She stared at the massive empty space where her master suite once stood, now nothing more than muddy grass that legally belonged to me. She began screaming at the sky, blaming outdated laws and a corrupt system for her downfall. "You ruined my life over some old rocks," she yelled when she spotted me. I leaned casually against my porch railing and took a sip of coffee. "No, Linda," I replied calmly. "You ruined your life the moment you decided your ego was bigger than the law." She tried to charge toward me, but her court-appointed security guard restrained her before she could take 2 steps. The Queen had officially unraveled. With her mansion partially demolished, its remaining value plummeted. Eventually, I purchased the rest of her property at a foreclosure auction for a fraction of its former price. I had no intention of living in that house, so I did the one thing she would have despised most. I converted the entire lot into a historical community park. Now, the very land she tried to seize is filled with children playing and families learning about our town's history. My 150-year-old stone wall stands at the center of the park, a permanent reminder that heritage is worth more than luxury. As for the HOA, it's under completely new leadership. We rewrote the bylaws to ensure no single person could ever hold unchecked power again. Every time I walk past that restored wall, I think about the rusted iron chest hidden in my basement. It taught me something important. Justice isn't just about winning. It's about protecting what's right, one stone at a time. So if you ever face a neighbor who thinks they own the world, remember this. Somewhere beneath your feet, there may be a truth powerful enough to bring them down. Don't let bullies win. Stand your ground. If you enjoyed this story, comment, and share. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, DH Story, for more stories like this. Thanks for watching.